So, we are mere weeks from the premiere of the Beatles Get Back, the three-part documentary series that covers the making of the Beatles' Let It Be album, or as it was known back then, Get Back. I am very excited for this to come out for quite a few reasons. Obviously, if you've watched my previous videos, you'll know I'm a huge Beatles fan, a fan of them all individually, really, as my last video was a 2-hour ranking of Paul McCartney's entire discography, so definitely check it out if you haven't already. So this new three-part series has got a lot riding on it, in my opinion. Producer and director Peter Jackson calls it a documentary of a documentary, as it uses extra footage captured by Michael Lindsay Hogg from his original verite film, Let It Be. Firstly, I love the way Get Back looks. From the teasers and trailers that I've seen, the quality appears to be incredible. Peter Jackson used the same technology that he used on the 2018 documentary They Shall Not Grow Old, where he revived vintage World War I reels to look crisp, modern, and colourful. This is already a huge reason to see it, in my opinion. The original Let It Be film hasn't been updated for public release since the goddamn 80s. And that clumsy 4:3 transfer to VHS and Betamax was criticised for its poor quality even at the time. They were going to release it in the 90s and then 2000s for DVD, but they got halfway through the process and just couldn't justify finishing it due to what the film actually represents, the early stages of what would become the Beatles' bitter breakup. There's also no convenient way to watch Let It Be. You can't just walk into a store and pick up a copy. They sell DVDs of it on Amazon, and you may even own a DVD of it yourself, but it's still a bootleg of a bad VHS rip. So to see exactly how haggard George Harrison looked in 1969 in crystal clear quality is going to be very cool. I think it's also interesting that due to delays from COVID, what was once going to be a 2-hour movie getting a theatrical release is now a 6-hour series divided up over 3 nights, premiering on Disney+. I originally didn't know how I felt about this change. On the one hand, I was really looking forward to sitting in a packed cinema with other Beatles fans, watching this uplifting, never before seen footage of the band, and just imagining how magical it would feel to be in that audience. And I'm pretty bummed that while I'm not going to be getting that sensory experience, I am getting an additional 4 hours of footage, and if I had to pick, I'd say more Beatles is always the better option. So I'll be watching it as soon as it comes out with a video on my thoughts right after, so make sure you're subscribed so you'll be amongst the first to see it. Also, because it's on Disney+, certain countries won't be able to access Get Back, which is a huge bummer. But I'm happy to say that I have a solution for those unlucky few, and it just so happens to be today's sponsor, Surfshark VPN. If you happen to live in countries like Israel, Greece, or South Africa where Disney Plus isn't available, a VPN may be the only way around that. Using Surfshark VPN means that you can avoid the annoying geo-blocking that prevents this because access shouldn't be tied to one's nationality. Surfshark VPN isn't just great for watching geo-blocked TV shows and movies, it's also an essential tool for online security and privacy. People are moving around and traveling a lot more now, and places like airports, hotels, and shopping malls often have very insecure public Wi-Fi, which means you're at risk of things like data mining and even surveillance. Surfshark VPN can get rid of all these problems and protects your information by encrypting all the data that you send through the internet, keeping anyone unwanted from seeing it. It's also super easy to use. I jumped on their website and had my account set up in less than a minute, and right now Surfshark has an excellent deal on. By using my link in the description and using promo code Elliot, you'll get 83% off, which means for something like a couple of bucks a month, you can be fully protected. Plus, you'll get 3 months for free. Surfshark also offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so if you try it, don't like it, you can easily cancel and get your money back. Thank you, Surfshark, for sponsoring, and now back to the video. I've seen the original Let It Be a couple of times, and while there's some intriguing moments, I always find it to be a bit of an underwhelming watch. The intent of the project, which was to chronicle the band's return to live performance after they ceased playing concerts in 1966, rarely feels focused on that intention. It's always felt kind of hodgepodge made with poor quality material of awkward interactions between the band, which, in the director's defense, was all he had to work with, as the whole band, with the exception of Paul McCartney, wasn't really interested in the idea from the start. This is much different to the Beatles that Peter Jackson was dealing with, who after 51 years have been able to separate themselves from the project, as they literally can't remember much of it to this day. I think the fact that the original Let It Be is so hard to access and people haven't really been able to watch it properly for decades has just added to this kind of Mandela effect of the Beatles legend. For anyone who isn't familiar with the term, the Mandela effect is the phenomenon in which a person or a group of people have false or distorted memories, because when you're remembering something, you're not actually remembering it. you're remembering the last time you remembered it. It's like if I told you to picture the Monopoly guy. What are you picturing? Top hat, money bag, maybe a monocle? Well, no, the Monopoly guy has never actually been depicted with a monocle at any point. We've all just collectively remembered it wrong. That's the Mandela effect, and I think that's what's happened with the original Let It Be film. Many people remember Let It Be as a kind of visual representation of all the most vindictive stories about the Beatles breakup that, true or not, have become legend. Like, I'll never forget when I was a teenager and my dad was talking about the Let It Be film, and he said there was a scene where Paul punches George. And then when I watched it later that year, I was anxiously waiting for that scene and it never happened. So I think what happened there is that my dad remembered that moment in the film between Paul and George, where Paul awkwardly tells George that he wants less guitar in his song, Two of Us. And it ends with George saying,
"Okay, well, I don't mind, I'll play, whatever you want me to play. Or I won't play at all if you don't want me to play. No, whatever it is that will please you, I'll do it."
Which even at the time, according to the director, was completely blown up by some people to represent the acrimony between George and Paul, and in fact was just a small little cloud which passed over their working relationship in 5 minutes. That's all it was. This tense, toxic atmosphere even worried Peter Jackson, who was originally very cautious of volunteering to helm the project because he was determined to make a Beatles film, not a Beatles breakup film, and was concerned that most of the material would be filled with the corrosive atmosphere so often associated with the band at this time. He even asked if he could look at the footage first to determine whether or not he would actually get on board with the project. That's how concerned he was. He said he was watching it, he was waiting for it to go bad, and that he had a kind of heavy heart, but that as he watched, history shifted, and quote, "What I found is that I was laughing continuously. I was just laughing, and I didn't stop." He said he was relieved to discover that the reality is very different to the myth. Sure, there's moments of drama, but none of the discord this project has long been associated with. And that's the key for me. Moments of drama, but overall a different picture of the Beatles. Look, I expect there to be tense moments in Get Back. In fact, I want to see even more than what we got in Let It Be. Like in the original film, they omit the footage of George quitting the band for a few days. If we were able to see that, that would be incredible. But then, you show what happened after. George came back and they continued to make great music because after all, the Beatles were like brothers who fought, but were ultimately extremely talented musicians who really enjoyed playing together. I want to see a more nuanced approach of that balance of good and bad times that contributes to a more compelling story of the band as opposed to an inconsistent one. I also hope it really addresses the individual characterizations of the band. Like the Beatles have always been reduced down to certain traits and behaviors that they're still labeled as today. George was always surly, Paul was always whimsical yet pushy, John was blah 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 blah. And I think that despite there being certain consistent qualities of the four, I feel like a lot of what we define them as has come from not just the Let It Be movie, but what the legacy of that movie has become. We take this little 2-minute interaction between Paul and George from one day back in 1969, and it's then mythologized over the course of 50 years as what we know the Beatles to be.
The original documentary was very narrow, and
Yes.
It was built around a moment of like, and there was no joy in it. And I was there, we were laughing, we were the lads.
And that is something I hope the new Get Back series helps to shift. Our own understanding of who the Beatles were. We've been working with the same footage, the same audio of the band for so long that we've scraped the absolute depths of what can be gleaned from their material. But then something new comes along that totally redefines that song, that time, that album, whatever it is. I'll give you a recent example. In 2018, they re-released the Beatles' White Album for its 50th anniversary, where we got all these outtakes and extra demos, and there's this one track in particular that really shook me, which was Goodnight, Take 10 with guitar part from Take 5. It's this take of the White Album's final track, Goodnight, written by John, sung by Ringo, who also sings lead in this take, but with the other three Beatles singing backup.
Good night, sleep tight.
And they produce this gorgeous, tender and warm 4-part harmony during the chorus, and it's like, wait a second, isn't this the album where they're all rehearsing and recording in separate studios? Isn't this basically a double album of all their solo work? Isn't this where they all started hating each other and John was fed up with Paul? But no. Here they are, the four of them together, working as a unit, figuring out Goodnight, with everyone contributing. It's these kinds of moments from all this recently unearthed material that really puts into question what we know and what has become legend. It's like this book that I read this year, Here, There and Everywhere, written by Jeff Emerick about his time as the Beatles engineer. A fascinating read, but several anecdotes have been called into question by other surviving witnesses, which is a recurring phenomenon with pretty much every book written about the band. And even Paul's admitted that occasionally he catches himself wondering whether it really was bad blood at the time, or if he's just bought into the supposed legend.
When the Beatles broke up, the talk was that, like, I was the villain. John and I didn't really get on well. I kind of bought into it, you know, because when you're called it enough, you start thinking, well, maybe I was, you know. Did I know John? Were we friends?
Something he realized further after Jackson showed him footage from that period, and he was relieved to see it wasn't all bitterness. In fact, there was lots of moments of joy and laughter.
It's like, yes, we were friends.
Because what's a lot harder to dispute is what we can see and hear with our own eyes and ears. So what I'm looking forward to are those moments with the band that show what the mood actually was. What was the real day-to-day vibe between them all? I don't doubt that there were frustrating moments. John and George have both publicly said that much of that time was very tough on them, for different reasons of course. But there's got to be more to the story. Peter Jackson's pretty good at handling stories, especially ones about great legends, so whatever he's able to come up with, I'll be very keen to see. Because I've always heard, especially from McCartney, that whatever tensions existed between the group, when they got in front of the mics and strapped on their guitars, it all just fell away as they locked into each other while they played. One of my favourite stories from the Abbey Road sessions is actually from their engineer Jeff Emerick, about how John, George and Ringo decided to trade guitar solos for the track The End on Abbey Road. The three of them stood in a kind of circle facing each other with their guitars and, quote, "For the hour or so that it took them to play those solos, all the bad blood, all the fighting, all the crap that had gone down between the three former friends was forgotten. John, Paul and George looked like they had gone back in time, like they were kids again, playing together for the sheer enjoyment of it. More than anything, they reminded me of gunslingers with their guitars strapped on, looks of steely-eyed resolve, determined to outdo one another. Yet, there was no animosity, no tension at all. You could tell that they were simply having fun." So that's the sort of stuff I really want to see, them just having fun while playing together. If you've listened to the recent 50th anniversary Super Deluxe release of the Let It Be album, you may have heard a sneak peek of what's to come, and I think it's a wonderful teaser. Especially the snippet where they're noodling around on the track Let It Be, and Paul starts playing a slower version of Please Please Me on piano, and during the bit that usually goes, come on, come on, come on, come on, he's just going,
But come on, come on, come on.
and to me it's like he's egging on the rest of the band by reminding them where they all started. It's just superb. Like if a biopic had written that, like it would feel a bit on the nose. So I'm super excited to see it, and if you're looking forward to it as well, please let me know in the comments. What do you think about the choice of changing it from a shorter theatrical version to a longer series on Disney+? And just what are you hoping to see in general? Leave a comment and let me know. And a special thank you to my patrons who have begun supporting me, and if you'd like to join them, the link to my Patreon is in the description, as is the link to get 83% off Surfshark VPN with the code Elliot. Alright, that's all from me. Take it easy everyone, and I will catch you in the next video.